All right, do you want to maybe get started there, Rick? I'll
Sure, Troy.
stop sharing my screen and let you take it.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rick Sterling, and I would like to introduce to you the other two people on the screen here today. Brian Hines, our general manager. Brian's doing the presentation with me today, and Troy Sawyer, our director of development for Western IM. We'd like to welcome you all back to our Learn With Us series. This is our first one of the new Learn With Us series. We'll be looking forward to continuing this on into the future. It's been very popular and everybody seems to really enjoy it. So thank you again for joining us today. A little bit about the session today. Our normal format is that we do a recorded presentation, a bit of a recorded presentation at the start. And then we open up live after that for questions and take questions that came in on chat. And Brian and I persevered and actually did our recording as good presenters, and Troy will run that presentation at the start of this event. So that's really good. Then we'll open up and we'll be live after that to answer questions. And please ask the questions. The chat is open, so use your chat at the bottom of the screen to ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll probably take the questions right after the recorded portion. So that's it. A little bit more at the end. I'll let you know what our next presentation is going to be on Learn With Us in December, and we'll go from there. Troy, could you fire up the recording for us, please?
Yep, sure. All right, and while we're playing this, I'll mute and we'll watch.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rick Sterling from Western IM, and I'll be joined today in this presentation by our Western IM General Manager, Brian Hines. I'll let Brian introduce himself a little bit more completely later on in the presentation when he comes in. Physical records inventory, why now? Well, a lot of people would say, what are we doing with physical records? Like, why are we still talking about physical records? But lately, I've been finding that there's a whole lot of people that are talking about physical records and trying to get an inventory and a handle on what they actually have. Thus, the presentation today. If you don't know what you have, you can't manage it. Here's what I want you to do with this. I want you to remember this one slide. If nothing else sticks today, always remember this one slide. I'd like you to take it and put it on a sticky note. If you don't know what you have, you can't manage it. And stick it to the corner of your screen, on your desk, on your whiteboard, something that you'll see every day. And keep that in mind going forward in your organizations. It's all about understanding what you actually have, both physical and electronic. Today we're going to deal with paper. Do we all still have paper? Well, I think all of you would say yes. In fact, I've met no one in the 25 years I've been doing records and information management that actually would tell me they don't have any paper. Although a lot of people talked about paperless offices back in the day, even at the start of all that. So it's everywhere. It's in filing cabinets, it's in people's closets, it's in basements, it's in offsite storage. And a lot of it, I think all of us would say that it's been there for a while, and in some cases, or maybe in many cases, we don't really know if what we have informationally about that paper is actually correct or not. We really don't know. We may have metadata that describes it, but we may not have information about that metadata. Some people would have boxes in record centers and offsite storage, but no idea at all what's actually in the boxes, just box information. So I think this is important to know that we need to actually determine what's in those boxes, what's in those offsite storage areas, what's in those offices and closets and filing cabinets. So why should we think about doing an inventory of paper information now? Well, we've just been over 2 years of COVID, and our teams are working from home. And granted, when in a paper environment, somebody had to go to the office likely to deal with the paper things that happened. I know that's the case with many of you. But this type of hands-on project, doing a paper right now, would assist in tightening up that team process a little bit from everybody that's been working from home. And a hybrid work environment will be the new norm from now on. I think we'll all agree with that. It's not going to change now. All of us aren't going back tomorrow to the office, to the bricks and mortar. Many of us are going to be working on a cyclical basis at home and at work, and doing that kind of hybrid environment that most of us got used to over COVID. And this kind of project that you could do, this inventory, paper inventory, it's time insensitive. So you could do something, you could do one filing cabinet, you could walk away and you could come back tomorrow and do another filing cabinet, or come back next month and do another filing cabinet. It's not the kind of thing you have to start and never stop on. You could kind of come back on a time insensitive way to deal with that project. Many people working from home, different requests for paper, good inventory will make that job a lot easier. And I think I've heard from many of you that there's been retirements in not just your kind of team, but also in the kind of subject matter expert group that in your organizations. So what happens there? Well, you kind of need to, if you can, start to do this sooner rather than later, because there may be more retirements. There may be more subject matter experts that you need to help you with that inventory that aren't going to be there tomorrow to make that easier for you. There may be move to start senior management to consolidate space and downsize. Well, if you think about it, a lot of organizations have done that already. When the lease expires on the building, on the space, they just get rid of it because they don't need all that space anymore. They haven't got that many. Everybody's not in the office every single day in the bricks and mortar environment. It's a hybrid environment. So cleaning up existing paper will be important to that related effort in your organization, if that's the case. Paper projects really lend themselves well to that easy scaling. So you could be as small as one filing cabinet. You could do a basement of boxes. Offsite storage is something you could pick and choose how much of that to do at any given time. So it's quite scalable, easy to do that particular type of scaling of a project. Volume of FOI requests. I don't know about you, but if any of you do privacy as well, you've seen an exponential increase in your freedom of information requests, your FOIP requests, your FOIA requests, whichever province you're in. Everybody I talk to is in the same boat. Not only is there more of them, but they're a lot more complex than they used to be. So this could be a great value, this whole idea of a source of truth of the paper information in your organization. Inventory of unknown content in offsite storage after applying your approved retention schedule. Disposition can save money, so that's pretty obvious, right? If you actually apply a retention schedule to offsite storage boxes, which you're being charged for every year, you can kind of knock those off once they're approved to be destruction is approved. Then you get rid of them. You're not paying for them anymore. So it's kind of an easy fix for an easy way to define the project. And finally, a couple of other things. Inventory and validation of existing information allows for previously unknown information, metadata, to be picked up. So, did we all look for things like security classifications on paper information 10, 15 years ago? Did we look for personal information? Did we look for vital records? Did we look for high value information, Office of Primary Responsibility, that kind of thing? Maybe not. So maybe it's time to go back and kind of pick up some of that information on our inventory that we already think we know about, and validate what's in the boxes and pick up any useful information along the way that is required. Inventory paper records will also assist in understanding corporate information and assist your team for the electronic inventory efforts. So if you've got new people on your team, nothing is better than getting people to understand how the organization worked or how things fit together than actually going through and looking at existing records and helping to understand how all the pieces fit together. through history, we found that historical reference, we found that 40 to 60% of your paper information can be reduced. If nothing's ever been destroyed, then 40 to 60% is possible in physical information in boxes that you currently have now. Just because once you have a classification system, a approved classification system and retention schedule, then you can apply that against what you have, validate that that's what it is, and get the authorization from your senior management to go ahead and get rid of that. So it's a huge potential there. So now the details of a large project. So what we always say around the office is it's always better to know all the steps you might have to take on a very large project. And then if you define a smaller one, you can pick and choose kind of which ones you need to do and in what order to get the job done. So that's what we're going to talk about now is a large project. And what is a large project? A large project is something like one we did several years ago now. So this is a large project. 100,000+ boxes of paper spread across over 100 locations across an entire province. So it was an 18-month project, several teams in the field, lots of moving parts, lots of things to do, and it was done on time and under budget, of course. But we'll talk about the kinds of things we did in that large project, and that'll give you a little bit more detail about things you might have to deal with if you're going to do a physical records inventory project yourselves. Now, I'm going to tell you the first thing you want to do, though, anytime you're going to do or thinking about doing a project like this, is select a project manager. And I put this slide in here particularly because I want to introduce Brian Hines to you now, our general manager at Western IM. Brian also, of course, serves the purpose of being the project management oversight at Western IM as well. So he's a good guy to have in this particular role. And Brian and I are going to do the rest of the presentation together, more or less, talking about those steps that we had to take in a very large project. So now we're actually into what the project looks like, all the tasks that you're going to do in this particular project. And again, we're taking this task list out to the extreme for a large project like the one we described earlier. So first of all, define the goal. So what is the goal? How big is the goal? Is it to inventory a couple of filing cabinets to clean out old Bill's office? Is it to actually get rid of a couple of C-cans full of records that you've got in some location in the organization? It's all about what the goal is for this particular project. List a list of locations. So, you know, amazing how many times you think you know all the locations where there might be records in the organization, but sometimes that's not exactly true. So this is a kind of asking questions, looking around, talking to divisions, areas in the organization where records might be, and trying to get a true list of those locations. And then analyzing what you already know about the target area. So you could say, okay, this is a C-can. For instance, it's a C-can, but there may be moisture damage, there may be animal droppings, there may be all kinds of things that we want to know about, that we want to do an analysis on before that we get into this project. Define the type of records you're going to inventory. So what is it? Is it boxes, folders, maps, DVDs, CDs, books, whatever it is? Lots of people still have libraries of publications that they want to keep too, and so that's the kind of things you're gonna detail out. Define the data to be captured for each physical record. So, you know, is it just the box and the folders, and we want to keep track of the folder, meaning we want to keep open date, close date on the folder, that kind of thing, so we can actually do disposition by folder in the box. Or do we want more information? Do we want to think of things like PII? Do we want to think of things like all the dates, particular dates? Is it a vital record? Isn't it a vital record? Is it an office of primary responsibility? That kind of thing. Is it a legal hold? All those kind of flags you might want to have, and security levels, that kind of thing that you might want to pick up during the project. And once you've done all that, then you want to document the whole scope of the project. Define the equipment required. That would be, generally you're going to need a laptop, you're going to need a printer, you're going to need, certain things. You're going to need a cart to put them on when you're doing the project, that kind of thing. And absolutely define the software you're going to need to do the project. And I will tell you this right now that yes, you could probably do this with a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, get this metadata in and capture the information. But if you're doing anything of any size, I would guarantee you that you want to go out and find absolutely find a great tool to do for this job. And I don't want to sound like a sales guy again, but one of the things, our Whisper, now named Agile IM, one of the things that happened with that software was it came out of this 100,000 box inventory project. And the reason is because we started using spreadsheets to do this project, and we soon realized that we needed more horsepower than what we had in terms of spreadsheets. So we actually started to build the code, which turned into Whisper and now into Agile IM, which is the newest name of that tool. So go and look at those software tools that you might need to do that job. Spreadsheet may not be quite enough to do the job. Brian, do you have comments on that?
Yeah, for sure, Rick. I've got a couple things I could add to that. I think the things you listed out, it looks like a long list, but truly you need to think about hours, not days, to get this process underway. As a project manager, I'm going to tell you I have a three-phase approach to these kind of things. The first thing I do is draft one is the concept, draft two is the details, and draft three is my plan. You really need to just quickly write it down and then go back and read it and go, where do I need to change it?
So just to continue along that line a little bit on the take action side, is you're going to define the number of hours and number of staff you need for the project. So is it one team of 2 people? Is it 2 teams of 2 people? Is it 3 teams? What depends on the size of the project, obviously. You're going to review or establish a documented classification schedule and retention schedule. So if you're going to do this, it would be nice to have an actual approved retention schedule and classification system, so you could actually assign those during the inventory. Set a budget for the project. Make sure you got that kind of notched out. Identify a project sponsor, most senior management person you can find. So if you're doing a small project in one particular department, then go to the head of the department and get them to be the project sponsor for this project. If it's a much larger project like the one we're talking about, then you're going to go to a CEO level or somebody up at the top C level to try and get approval for that project. And once you've got the project sponsor, then you're going to want to write your business case. Make sure you got that notched out into smaller, bite-sized kind of projects you can do to get everybody tuned up and your team's running smoothly and all that kind of thing, so that you're all ready to go when you're in the project. And obtain your sponsor support, and including your funding, right? You need your funding before you can go forward.
Yeah, Rick, I think the really important thing on that slide was the project sponsor. I mean, this could be somebody in the higher management level that you're getting your budget approval, but almost equally you should consider some departmental person where you're going to think you're going to go and do the inventory maybe as your first attempt, because having operational support is critical to the success of your process.
And now the process and equipment. So you get IT's buy-in right away, because you're going to need them as part of this project. So you need to make sure that we can get the equipment set up properly, get the internet connection set up properly for the project you're going to be doing. Establish database. So you need a database that you can put all this information in, depending on the tool you acquire to do the job and the size of the project. Again, smaller ones, spreadsheet probably works fine. Bigger ones, you need tools. Establish backup and maintenance procedures with IT. So make sure that all the work you're doing is getting backed up somewhere in the system, in the main system. Establish process and this is all establishing process. Identification and coding of each metadata field. Process for exception handling. So if a box is broken, what do you do? What's the process look like? take a picture of it, get somebody to approve it, get somebody to look at the box, some subject matter expert. Anyway, there needs to be a process set up for that particular type of thing. And establish a process for legal hold identification. If that's something you're going to do, you're going to need to go to legal, make sure you understand how that process should look, and get that all written down. Establish process for transfer expired records to storage. So if the goal of the project is to inventory the stuff and then ship it over to an offsite storage location, then you need to have that process down and how that's going to be dealt with.
Yeah, for sure. Process is really critical. You're actually entering into phase 2 of your inventory project here. You need to make sure that you've got everything set up and ready to go to do it successfully. But keep in mind that the scope and scale of your goals and things are going to dictate which processes you're going to really pay attention to here.
So here's about building the team. Yeah, sometimes it's not easy to acquire personnel resources, and I'm told these days, after a couple of years of COVID, it's pretty difficult to find quality people to do work. So if you can't find them internally, it may take a little bit of time to try and track down the right people from externally in the organization. Provide access to the software tools. So IT is going to have to give them access, set them up on their PCs, make sure they have access to the tool, whatever tool you've chosen. Train the team on software tools, equipment, and inventory process. Seems kind of reasonable, right? Train the team on marking records as captured. So very important concept here is once you've actually got the inventory, the metadata in for a particular object, like a folder or a box or whatever, make sure that you actually use some mechanism to say that you've actually got that information already. So if you go away and come back again, you actually know where you left off when you did the last job. So let's train people on the classification system. So if the role of the teams is to actually do the inventory and classify at the same time, they're going to have to understand how that's going to work. Train the team on progress reports and exception reports. So how are those reports going to look? Somebody's got to write the reports. Very important to have the reports in the first place, because that's how you're going to prove to management that things are going well in the project. And identify the subject matter experts for all locations. You're going to need those people. Those are the people that actually know what all the stuff is. They were there probably when it was created in a lot of cases, and they're going to be able to help you in identifying what it is that your teams are actually looking at in those locations. Brian, comments on that?
Okay, so obviously it's train. That's pretty obvious from the slide. One of the things you always have to remember when you're training staff, though, is to consider their safety. So in the instance where you go and you open up a bunch of boxes and it's incredibly moldy and stuff, they need to know what they're supposed to do in terms of ensuring their personal safety.
So this is us actually executing the project. We need to set the schedule and be very careful how you set the schedule. Make sure that in the front end of the schedule, when you're doing those little bite-sized projects, you've got lots of time to work with the teams and make sure that they're comfortable in the way they're doing the work. Be open and honest at all times with your teams and all the people around you, like the subject matter experts and senior management people you're dealing with. Issue sponsor communication to all staff. And so if you're going to go to an area, make sure that somebody lets them know that you're going to be there ahead of time, so that they're not surprised when you get there. Ingest data from existing sources. So if you've got, and like everybody else, you've got tons of old spreadsheets of information, you might want to ingest all that information first of all into the tool. So pick whatever you've got and bring it in and kind of line it up so that, if you had 2 or 3 different kinds of spreadsheets with kind of different metadata styles and that in them, that all of it comes out looking the same when you ingest the information. So again, it's sometimes a little bit of a time-consuming effort, but it's really, really good to do that if you can. Then you've got the data in there, especially if you're doing a validation project. In other words, we've got a box, we think we know what's in it, but we're not sure. And nobody's going to give us the authority to destroy the box unless we actually validate what we think is in the box. So that would be the reason to ingest the old metadata from previous spreadsheets and things like that, or databases. And identify any missing metadata after you do that kind of ingestion of the information. For new records and for ingested records, always confirm identification and metadata and mark as captured when it happens. Very important to do. Brian, comment on that?
Yeah, so now we've got all the planning in place. We're actually going to execute. We're actually going to do some real work here. So critical thing is have a schedule. And my comment to that would be smart project management says start small, pick an area that has high profile, high value to your corporation, but is small enough that you can accomplish. And as soon as you've done that, of course, you're going to get credibility with your organization. So again, set the schedule, make sure your sponsor communications are in place, and let's go.
And some of the finishing up things on the execution of the project. So new records, enter identification and metadata and mark as captured. Now we've said that quite a few times, but it's a pretty important concept, that whole idea of marking as captured. Log and publish any issues that have occurred along the way. Prepare the area progress report and exceptions report weekly. So make sure you kind of keep on top of that and get it done on a weekly basis. Prepare a report to operations management and sponsor, because you want the sponsor to know that everything's been going according to oil. Review and update the project's processes and carry on. And watch for consistency I think is very, very important. And upon completion, conduct management review, obtain approval to continue at the other locations as required. So we're assuming that you've done one location now and you're going to move on to another location as part of this project, larger project that you're doing. And in our case, for the project we talked about, that it was 115 locations. So it was important to kind of finish one off and then get everything under control and then kind of get approval to move on to the next location. Brian, comments on that and conclusions on the tasks of execution of the project?
Yeah, for sure, Rick. I mean, you covered off a really important points, and I just want to reemphasize two of them again. Make sure you keep track and mark the stuff that you've actually inventoried so that if you get distracted or delayed, you can come back and carry on without any additional effort. The second thing, of course, is communications, right? Make sure that people are aware of what you've been able to accomplish and show them the value of it, and that will ensure that you get more credibility in the organization, but you also probably get more funding. And so at the end of the day, project management, plan big, start small, execute one at a time, and you'll have great success. Have a great day.
So that's the conclusion of our recorded presentation. And of course, Brian and I are going to be live. So look forward to hearing from all of you. Look forward to answering any questions that came in during the recorded presentation, and really excited to have people that have taken part in this kind of project themselves before to speak. Raise your hand or do the raise hand in the webinar and speak to your projects that you've been successful in. And thank you so much for allowing us to share your time today.
Great. So I know in a previous webinar, we had a little bit of trouble with the chat not coming through. So if you're having any issues and would like to, and not getting through there, try the QA section. And if not as well, you can always raise your hand and we can allow people to talk as well.
Yeah, sorry, look forward to getting questions from anybody that wants to ask questions at this point.
So just while other people are doing it, maybe I will kind of shoot a couple of questions at you just to get things going. The one part during the presentation that kind of I think a lot of people will feel, is one of the more daunting tasks is actually managing staff to do this. So in projects like this, you often have people trying to execute records people's functionality that aren't records people. So what kind of things came up in that particular project where you had, summer students or temp staff trying to do classification on objects, and what were some of the things you did to kind of alleviate some of the difficult points there?
Well, I'll speak and then I'll let Brian kind of add to that as well. The teams were made up of a couple of people in each case, at least two people, and one of those people had excellent keyboard skills. So it's very, very, very critical to make sure that at least someone on each team, however many teams you have, has really good keyboard skills, because they're going to be popping in a lot of metadata here, and want to make sure it's correct, the stuff that goes into the system, no matter what kind of tools you use. So that's the first thing. And in our particular large project that we talked about, we hired people specifically for that project. At that time, there was some really marvelous candidates who were looking for employment and were happy to be able to do the project with us. The one thing, though, we did have overarching above all of the teams that were in the field, we had a strong records management background person as the project management on the ground.
Right.
Brian, you want to talk a little bit about that?
No, I think you covered it off there pretty good, Rick. Yeah, having somebody with a real strong records management that is involved in a day-to-day operation of the team. So that was important. The other thing is because the teams went across the province, I mean, they were driving and having to relocate frequently. We had to make sure that everybody had a driver's license, right? They could handle that. And I think the other thing is you have to remember that these people are lifting boxes and doing all kinds of things. So you have to have somebody on your team that has got the ability to do that. There's a lot of factors involved there, but I think it depends on the scale of your project.
So just taking a look back again at more detail of that kind of makeup, is you have a records management person that actually understands records management, but there also is a great deal of discussion with subject matter experts in any given location about what these actual records are. So now, no matter how good a records person you are, sometimes you can figure out what the information is that you're looking at in the boxes, but that may not necessarily be true without the help of somebody there that went, oh yeah, I remember when we created this, or we put old Bill's office into a box, or whatever happened, because you do find things in boxes that you never expected to find during this kind of project. So that's also one of those things that happens along the way. But the records management kind of project management person doesn't necessarily have to be on site every day, every hour of every day,
Right.
Because it could be that if you had a good tool to do the work, that there's some way to be able to take a picture of something or send that to the project management person, the records manager, and show them what it is you're talking about once a day, once a week, whenever that kind of management team team gets together to discuss things that occur during the week. So there's a process again involved in all of these things.
Yeah, so I mean, the other thing about the project manager on site, Rick, was that we enforced a weekly meeting of the entire team. Like we had 3 different site teams working. They all came together and compared the things that they found and the issues that they had run into. So the learning curve was continuous. It's not a one-shot deal.
Yeah, and I guess just to extend that out is the reason that eventually you could have the records management kind of lead not on site every day is because the teams get more knowledge as they go forward on the project and get better at deciding what things are as they're putting things into the tool along the way. They get a little more skilled in that whole process of figuring out what it is they're looking at and being able to put the information in.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that organizations need to make sure their classification includes rubber boots.
There have been lots of boots found in lots of boxes, Troy, for sure, over the years.
Including some satellite phones and other related things.
Yeah, some very valuable things sometimes. I've actually heard from other people that I know quite well that they found things like stock certificates and all kinds of things worth many millions of dollars in those boxes as well over a period of time.
So an interesting thing about that is quite often what happens is somebody retires, leaves, whatever, some reason they're no longer there. Somebody comes along and takes boxes and literally just cleans everything off their desk and puts it in there. And then a month later, they somehow end up in storage and they're forever. So you really don't know what you're going to find. I mean, in one case, we found a whole bunch of maps that people have been looking for 15 years. I mean, they just didn't know they have it. So that goes back to you can't manage what you don't know you have, right?
I think that's kind of the true in almost every case I've heard with physical records inventory project is that people are, there's things that people are kind of constantly looking for, maybe not, you know, oh my God, we'll all die on the hill kind of looking for, but things that they knew they had, but they can't find anymore, that maybe the division you're doing the work for or wherever you're doing the actual work, if you find that kind of information out, you can be on the lookout for those things that they've been looking for quite some time. It can really make a very valuable component to a successful project if you actually track down some of those long-term things that people have been looking for many, many years, probably. And I think I wanted to talk, when we did recorded the project, and Brian, thanks for bringing that personal safety issue up in that one slide. I just wanted to reiterate to everybody that physical records can be not in the greatest of locations sometimes. And it is really important to have kind of safety issues defined for your teams if they're out in the field doing work, because some of those locations can be very very hard and very, very brutal, sometimes cold, sometimes dusty, sometimes dirty, making sure that everybody knows the rules of the road related to health and safety for the teams.
Good. So kind of just near the end there, you mentioned some stuff about completing one area before moving on to another kind of thing. Essentially, with projects like this, when are you done? Like, what defines being done a physical inventory, and is there an end?
Great question, Troy. I don't know that there may not, you know, for a much larger organization, there is probably not a whole lot of end, but in this particular large project, one of the goals of the project was to inventory the information and move it out to an offsite storage location, a centralized offsite storage location, so it was all in one place. So that was the goal of that particular project, was to make that an end. And of course, when you're planning it out, you're going to decide what that should look like. Also, I would go back and make sure that everybody gets validation from their sponsor that they can actually destroy things that have met retention and disposition rules. So what I mean by that is I've seen situations where people will go out and do inventory, but they haven't actually dotted their I's and crossed their T's with the general counsel, legal department, CEO, whoever it is that is at that level that can say, here's the rules. If you find this, if you find that, if you find them and that meet disposition, the box can be destroyed. So you kind of need to have that. The other thing I found too in mostly provincial government situations is, let's say archives says, okay, we can't let you destroy the box because you don't know what's in it. So we're into a more validation kind of process at that point. Like, I've got metadata, I think I know what's in the box now, but we're not really sure, because that happened a long time ago. It might have been sitting in storage for 20 years. You don't know. And in a validation project, what you're doing is saying to that person in charge, okay, if we go find the box, pull the box, validate what's in it, are you going to let us destroy it? And it means if it meets retention and disposition. And the answer needs to be spelled out in writing that you can actually go forward and do that at the end of the project. So it's kind of making sure all those loose ends are tied up and everybody is aware that the end result of the project is going to be maybe I'm sending it all to an offsite storage, or B, I'm going to match it up with retention disposition, get it approved and get it destroyed, shredded. So make sure you've got all that kind of tied up, all the loose ends tied up before you start the project.
There was one comment here about safety advice we were talking about earlier, is that to always let colleagues know when you're entering into a closed space or storage area alone, and also taking fully charged cell phones and stuff to make sure you can just have that scenario where you end up getting locked in a basement because nobody knows you're down there kind of thing, or
Yeah, yeah, for sure, Troy. It's a great point. I mean, that's Brian kind of talked about that in the presentation a little bit. You really want to make sure you have the authorization and approval of the person that is in charge of that location that you're going to be there. Because I've seen people land on somebody's doorstep and they go, "Who are you?" Like, I didn't know you were coming. What's the deal here? You need somebody of some authorized person, individual, to make sure that the people approve and allow you to be there. Because sometimes there's security concerns too. Some of the information might be quite concerning from a security standpoint. So people want to know that you're authorized to be there, and in fact, you're going to be good to be there. And in our case, in this large project we talked about, there was actually a person. One of the rules of the road was a person from the corporation had to be part of the team and on site whenever we
Right.
came into that location. So it wouldn't just be Western IM team going in to do that inventory at that time. Somebody from the corporation had to be there with them so that they could validate that, liaise with the location people that were there, make sure the security was in place and all that kind of stuff. So it was all looked after as a well planned out exercise.
Yeah, that's really important, because it's really important that the person that is authorizing you into the space understands why you're there and what you're trying to accomplish. Because we had one situation where we went there and the person wasn't there and somebody took their place and they had no idea what we're doing. And when we got there was no staff there because they were all on site at another location. So you really have to make sure you plan it out and communicate it. Otherwise, you're going to waste time.
Yeah, we got
to. Sorry, Peggy, you mentioned here, for example, we had someone stuck at work today during a power outage during a snowstorm. So always a good reason, not even just for projects like this, but good advice in general.
Oh, that must have been from Winnipeg, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, that's Winnipeg for sure. I should say that I'm very attuned to that conversation about safety and what Peggy said about people stuck, because I've actually been stuck in an elevator with a power outage before, and it was not a pleasant experience. I was in there all by myself for quite a long time, and it got a little bit nerve-wracking after a while. So I've been in that spot before, and you want to make sure that somebody always knows you're there.
Okay, now, Rick, you really have to appreciate this then, because you can be 3,500 feet down in a mine site and the audible warning lights all go off and you're there with your headlight. That's it.
I can't even imagine what that was like, Brian.
Yeah, it's called a 14-hour walkout.
Yeah,
anyway,
it's
really interesting, and I'm surprised some of the people that are attending today, I'm surprised that Sarah hasn't pointed out we missed something. But
I don't have any more to say. We don't have a lot.
I think this is maybe a good spot we can wrap up today, and then let everybody know we'll be posting the recording to this as well as the slides if necessary on the website here. We'll get an email out to everybody for that. But if you want to go ahead and Rick and wrap up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again to everybody for attending. I must say that this is kind of a wonderful thing that everybody stays together as a community. COVID has been tough on our records management community over the last couple of years, and we all want to stay together as a community and look after each other. So all this Learn With Us and some of the other initiatives we're doing right now is all about keeping everybody together. The next presentation for Learn With Us will be in joint with an IM Canada Connect, which is an ARMA chapter initiative that we started this year, and we're kind of send it out to both lists for this particular presentation. And it won't be an actual presentation as such. What we'll be doing is we'll be putting up polling information during that session. It'll be December-ish, right? In December, so it's kind of a Christmassy thing. But we want to poll everybody and find out what topics are most near and dear to everybody's heart that they'd like to learn about over the next coming months. So I think it'll be very valuable for all of us to get together and just understand what topics are most important to all of us as a group. Keep our community together. Thanks so much for being here, and thanks Brian and Troy for being here as well today.
That'll
Look
be a
forward to seeing everybody in the next one.
great opportunity for a Merry Christmas. Take care.
Yeah, and have a happy holiday season, everybody, if you're not on.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.